Or as
especially it's slippery.
or as my friends say, quit digging the hole.
The edges are slippery.
They say, Elmer, quit digging the hole. But I am glad that you've got another putative Catholic in your life who's promoting you. See, we Catholics, we're good at storytelling. Not as good as the Jews.
We are good at storytelling.
Well,
you're talking about real storytelling or just sheer bad mouthing?
well, lying.
Right. So you feel at home here, I suppose, right?
Not really. I hated the Catholics.
Yeah, but see, here when I'm with you, I feel safe.
Why?
Because every time I come out of my building, which is on the other side, I
Right.
don't cross the street. I stay on the other sidewalk.
Because the Italian assassin, beautiful Italian assassin, is after you.
No, there is. I don't know. I have. For a long time, I stayed away from churches.
Well, you didn't stay away from the Belgian churches with all the relics.
No, I actually. The only church I stayed away was the one in my village.
Really? Why is that?
When I was a little kid, and it always sounded like foreign, strange environment.
Did they pick on you?
You mean who?
You, as a little boy.
No, but who picked?
The Catholics.
I don't think that's the way it works.
Well, how does it work?
Well, the church, the church is a central part of the village in France, and today there is more diversity of churches.
Why, there are Protestant churches?
Well, yeah, there are Protestant and there are different kinds of Protestant churches. But for many years, when I was a kid, it was a monolithic.
You right here, gentlemen?
Yeah.
I'm not interrupting anything.
No.
Okay.
But next time when you come up, don't ask, because it gets recorded out of it. Could I get a glass of ice, though? Tall glass of ice?
Oh, that's no problem.
Thank you.
It's just going to be taken care
Hi,
of.
Kate. Aren't you nice?
You have a glass of ice here.
Oh, I do have. You're right. I'm sorry. My mistake. Kate, we're just sitting here and schmoozing, so.
Don't worry.
And I'm recording him, so I'm trying to.
He doesn't see very well. He needs to change his glasses.
He's completely irritating and annoying because he's French.
So do you need some time then?
Yeah.
Over here, just kind of alone?
Yeah, that'd be
All right,
great.
yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, if you hear noise of glass, broken glass,
Yeah.
don't worry.
Oh,
That's
don't worry.
me hitting him over the head with one of these things. Believe it or not, he's a famous author.
Well, yeah, about bullshit. Yeah, bullshit.
Thank you. We cause trouble everywhere.
Anyway, so the church was associated with the people, and on Sundays they would go to church. Many people would go to church. That's, by the way, that's the day the pastry shop was doing most of its money.
Yeah.
They had plenty of customers after church. People go to the pastry shop, and they are dressed up for the Sunday, and you don't feel part of it.
Right.
And
Being Jewish.
and being Jewish, and since there was a certain amount of hostility that compound the thing. So I was familiar with the rabbi and the synagogue. Also, the distance between a Jew and the rabbi is much smaller than the one
Right.
between the Catholic and the priest. Just the way the synagogue is arranged and the way the church is arranged, the two are very orthogonal, even 180 degrees. You know how our synagogue was organized?
No.
Was arranged? It's an interesting building. It's still standing.
Was it in La Pointe?
No, Avignon.
Avignon.
There was no. There were only a few synagogues. One in Avignon, one in Carpentras, one in Cavaillon.
Huh.
A few tens of kilometers apart. The one from Avignon, the one we attend, which was the closest, it's essentially, if you come from outside, It's a regular building. It looks like a regular building.
Huh.
When you go in, you pass the main gate, and the main gate is on the right of the center of the building. So you have a main gate, you enter, and then you get into a corner of that building, and you feel there is another building inside, which is round.
Interesting.
So there is another door which gets you into the synagogue, and when you are in the synagogue, you don't see the square shape, it's all round.
Interesting.
And fundamentally, there is a stage in the middle, a little elevated, where the rabbi and the, how do I call them, the dignitaries of the community are sitting, and they are everybody is sitting in circles. You don't have the priest on one side and the congregation on the other side. And there are 2 rows of chairs around against the wall, and then there are pillars, maybe 1.5 yards from the wall, and there is another row of chairs. So it is a very significant difference, and my religious lessons as a kid preparing for bar mitzvah, the rabbi is sitting with us, you know, in a room, in a class, and around the table, and we're talking. He's talking, and I remember arguing with him.
And you said he welcomed the argument.
He absolutely welcomed the argument. My little friends were telling about the catechism. The catechism lessons, you got to listen to what the guy said, and you have to learn by heart pieces and recite them, etc. So it's a very different environment. I felt that, through my friends, I felt the distance, because they were also distant somewhat.
Distant from what?
From the priest and the church. They
Right.
were in, but distant somewhat.
Right.
And also, the rabbi, when you meet the rabbi in the street, our rabbi, with the exception of the kippah he's wearing, he wears a suit like everybody else. Today the Catholics don't wear it, most of them don't wear the old-fashioned robe, but
Right.
in those days, it was a very distinctive uniform. So it was all constructed to create impose a certain ranking, maybe unofficially.
Was the plain exterior of the synagogue in Avignon, was that because of prejudice? That they wanted to hide?
Outside?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose so, but you can't prove it, because in streets, the buildings are rectangular, corners. So around the building is more on a square, in the middle of the square, than as part of a row of building. So even if you didn't care about what the other people would say, you couldn't do a round building. You would have to do a square one on the inside around it.
No, I see.
But I also think more the roundness of the building is not the issue. The signs outside. There is no sign.
Right. And why do you think no signs?
No Hebrew,
Why no?
Here you go to a town, you see the synagogue, there is a sign 200 yards ahead, there is a sign, it's very open. Not in France. In France, it's introverted Judaism. In fact, I wrote to somebody recently that when I was in Morocco, I used to go on holidays, Jewish holidays. I didn't have any activity there, and I used to go into the Jewish neighborhood of Casablanca. And I was amazed at the site. In the streets, the people living in a neighborhood which is largely Jewish, but not exclusively, they would go from home on Saturday morning. They would walk from home to the synagogue with their shawl on their back. They put the prayer shawl on their back outside in the street. My father would never do that. He would stuff his prayer shawl into a bag because he didn't want to be noticed as such. It's a very high sensitivity of the Jews to real things, right?
What's the status of the synagogue in Avignon now?
It's still standing. The composition of the population has changed. It used to be, when I was a kid, it was numerically, there were two bodies, or three bodies, excuse me. There was one body of Jews of Central Europe, another body of Jews from Turkey, Greece, mostly a little bit Italian, but mostly Turkey and Greece. The dominant body was from Central Europe. The third body were French Jews, who very seldom set foot in the synagogue.
Oh, really?
Very seldom. Some I never saw in the synagogue. Jews, but mostly assimilated and not eager to participate in the synagogue, partially because they probably don't need it, but partially because the leaders of the synagogue in numbers were the Polish, Russian, Lithuanian Jews, who are kind of, lower form of life, so they didn't mingle too much. For a while, there was a president of the congregation that was from Alsace, French Jew from Alsace. But generally, few of the French Jews came to the synagogue anyway. Today, it's been displaced. The balance has been displaced because after the Algiers War, and after the peace treaty between de Gaulle and Algeria, there was a large immigration of Algerian Jews back to France. Those who had French citizenship, most of them had French citizenship in Algeria because Algeria was a French territory, not a colony. So they came back. They were kicked out, they were pushed out, and they were afraid from the Muslim revolt. So they came back and many of them established their new life in the south of France because the climate is very similar. And de Gaulle also wanted to decentralize activities in France, so he pushed a new settler to stay in the south or in the area, on the periphery, away from Paris. He gave incentive to that. So Avignon was more, at some point, the larger group became Jews from North Africa. And they changed it's not just the human landscape, it's also the cultural landscape that came in, and that changed significantly. I see today, but it's still a functioning synagogue. It's more oriented towards the ritual than it was during my days. During my days, there was a combination of ritual and life philosophy. Today, it's much more ritualistic. My friend, who is a French French origin Jew, the Jews from the Pope's days, is absolutely shocked by that change. Although he's not Polish. Well, his father is from Hungary, so I don't know. Was from Hungary. It's interesting that it reflects probably one of the differences in France between, you know, there is a head rabbi in France, and the elections for the head rabbis in past, you know, from say, the last 30 years, the contenders during those elections were two different kinds of rabbis. It's interesting, there was always one of each kind. One was what I would call a Jew, a very self-affirmed Jew, but in his order of priorities, he's French first. He's French first, and he's careful not to display excessive Judaism outside. He's not hiding he's Jewish, but his behavior, his way of conducting himself, the issues that he's dealing with are very strongly influenced by his desire to be part of the French system. The other one, candidate, has often been a more ritualistic Jew, more affirming to the outside his Judaism.
The difference.
And his difference.
Right.
Without saying, I'm not French, he's French too, but you can see the difference, and also the level of education. The first would have degrees in French from French schools and university. The other one would be a graduate of rabbinical schools, you know, exclusively. So you see it's an emphasis issue, and the last elected one was a more, not assimilationist, but more integrated into the French society. The previous one was more a ritualistic rabbi, and the last one actually resigned because he was caught doing plagiarism. He wrote books and he was a philosopher, but he was caught, you know, he had copied segments from previous books, in American one translated, so it's a bit more remote, you see. So he was an embarrassment. He who wanted to be as French as possible ended up being as Jewish as could be. Anyway.
Now tell me this. So what is the?
By the way, he didn't copy me.
Oh, good. Not yet. So
no,
what?
No, what do you mean not yet? He will not be able to do it anymore.
Well, that's true.
So he lost his opportunity when he gave it up.
Right.
Yeah, initially.
So he says.
I hate him for that reason.
Yes, really.
Yeah, right.
What? The last question. Then I want to go to the question of the diaries. What's the status? What was and what is the status of the Marseille Jewish community?
Very interesting question, sir. It's time that I do your education now. Marseille, I don't want to go over all Judaism of France, but let's take 2 points.
Right.
My area, my town and area, which is Avignon and the neighborhood, and Marseille, 2 points. My area is an area which traditionally was agricultural. A little bit of industry, I would say manufacturing instead of industry. manufacture comes from hand, used to be hand.
Right.
Marseille, in the opposite, was a transit point, port area. So the nature of, say, a Jew settling in Marseille versus one settling in Avignon, it's a different type of business, it's a different crowd, and the origin is often different. So the net result is that in the past, Marseille was very heavily populated with Jews from North Africa, Turkey, and Greece. On the other hand, my town area was more populated with Jews from Central Europe. Doesn't mean that there was no crossover, but and you can see the difference in terms of when you look at the deportation lists, and you see the convoys from Marseille, there's a significant amount of Jews from North Africa that were immigrated into France before the war and settled in Marseille. Because of the business nature, there were also French Jews that were attracted there from either Alsace or from Paris area. So you find, transport companies, maritime transports and goods coming from outside, sugar material in the days of sugar cane, spices, all kinds of goods coming from far place in the Mediterranean, etc. Traders, actually, Jewish traders established themselves in Marseille because it was a turning point. So the population, the motivation of the population was different. Whereas in the Avignon area, they came there, mostly at times, many times to do some business, facing the peasants, the farmers, right? So it's generally intermediary textile, which was the most. The textile, leather industry. These are were the two main businesses. What is interesting is that in spite of all the events, the next generation became far more integrated into liberal professions. Lawyers, doctors, engineers, as opposed to the previous generation who was mostly in business, small business, medium business. So there's been a change of landscape, of the Jewish landscape. Anyway, so Marseille, I don't know, there is a large community, there are few large synagogues in Marseille. They're involved in politics too. By the way, in Avignon also. So the new generation, is getting more in. The new generation in both the types of communities have gotten closer to more away from the traditional Jewish professions. They became more implicated in the French culture.
What about the Jewish community in Marseille during the war?
During the war, they interestingly, which I'm I didn't study into the same degree of detail one of Marseille, but I started observing what happened in Marseille with the eyes of what I did in Avignon, which is, there is a very significant central question. How much were the Jews hidden? Were they in the open? Right? And surprisingly, the number of Jews caught in Marseille, in the city, was very big. So it seems that to some extent the lack of excessive worry, I mean, Jews were worried by the measures against them, but for some reason they did not go underground. Maybe they couldn't. So you find a certain amount of openness of the Jews both in Marseille and in my area. I think one of the reasons was that both Marseille and my area were free of Germans until the end of November 42, which may have caused Jews to relax a bit. They knew the French deported foreign Jews from the south in summer of 42, but these were foreign Jews that had come late. So those who had come earlier and even had French citizenship, acquired French citizenship, they felt more secure until the bell rang. But the bell started ringing somewhere in spring of 43. So the fact that they caught a significant number is probably due to the fact that hostility against them was not as uniform from the beginning.